So what happened? So this resulted in two kinds of literacies. So the young and the educated, they knew how to read and write in the Roman system, while the old and the impoverished read and wrote using the Baybayin. So it created kind of like a gap between those who were using the Baybayin and those who were familiar with the new system. Later, many more would be attracted to learning the Roman system because this provided them with access to literature from the religious passion to the metrical romances known as the awit and corrido. Okay, so now this is from Raphael's Contracting Colonialism. That's the title of his book. So Raphael now quotes the various criticisms of the Spanish friars of the Baybayin. Among them, inadequacy. This is based on Marsilla's comments that the critical marks do not suffice to make text readable. So we're just outlining here all the criticisms of the Spaniards. So one is inadequacy, second is ambiguity, right? Meaning the reader needs to guess the breaks in each syllable. And the third one is illegibility, because the San Agustin said that you only have two letters, and yet these two letters, they can be read in 8 different ways. Okay, so it's not legible. Okay, so what Raphael also points out is that the word kudlit also means a scratch in Tagalog. So he says, and I quote, thus, a kudlit or kudlit, because remember, R is also D, the kudlit marks the boundary where writing is given up to voice. That is, the line that by giving value or stress to a symbol determines the sound of the signifier, thus delimiting the range of signifiers that can be attached to it, as called forth a multiplicity of signifiers that can be attached to it. What? As called forth a multiplicity of sounds. I'm sorry, let me repeat. As called forth a multiplicity of sounds and consequently other signifiers. Hence, from a Spanish point of view, the illegibility and unreadability of the script results from the lack of a direct and fixed correspondence between script and sound. What does it mean? So, let's try to explain this more simply. So, okay. So you have the script, right? So you have a script, and this is a script. So let's say it's ba. Remember ba, the inverted heart? So if you put remember that if you put a diacritical mark on top, it becomes B or be. And if you put a diacritical mark at the bottom, then it becomes bo or bu, right? So what is more important really is not that symbol, but the voice that interprets it, because the symbol is just like 3 or maybe it starts with 1, but the voice can manipulate it such that there are many ways to interpret a different symbol. Okay? So, from the Spanish point of view, what happens is they think this is not legible. They think that this is not readable. Because from the point of view of the Spaniards, it's not possible for something to have many different meanings. So, okay, let me give an example. So, for example, let's look at the word bayan. Okay? The word bayan in Tagalog means country. It also means people. It also means town. So, and this is from the discussion of historian Damon Woods. So, for example, if you are from a town called Malolos in Bulacan, you can say, I come from the town of the bayan of Malolos. But then you can also come from the Philippines. So you can also say, well, I come from Bayang Pilipinas. So is it a town or is it a country? It's both. Bayan means both. So, but for the Spaniards, a town is not a country. A town is a town. A city is a city. A village is a village. It's not the same. They're disturbed by such things. But for Filipinos, no, it doesn't matter. Right? So, It's a little bit like time, right? Have you heard of Filipino time? So, for example, people say, let's meet at 8 o'clock, right? What does it mean? It means anything from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, right? In other cultures, if you have a bus, for example, and the bus time, it says that the bus says arrives at 9:03. At what point do some people panic, for example, in Japan? If 9:04 the bus is not there, people say, the bus is late, the bus is late. In the Philippines, if you're waiting for the jeepney and you ask, what time does the jeepney arrive? Who knows when the jeepney will arrive? Or what time does this bus leave? When the bus is full, then it will leave. And nobody is bothered by non-exactness. So, for the Filipinos, this baybayin system of the kutlit and the many ways of reading a letter is all fine. But for the Spaniards, it was something that they could not comprehend, or that they thought was really inferior. Okay, let's move on. For Rafael, the Spaniards failed to understand that Filipinos related voice and writing in a different way, and were not disturbed by ambiguity. His observations, however, can be affirmed if we look into indigenous Tagalog poetry, with its images and talinghaga or metaphor that suggest a multiplicity of interpretations. These indigenous verses, transmitted as oral literature, found contrast sharply to the fixed aral or lesson found at the end of religious poetry written by Filipinos during the Spanish colonial period. So this is my own little contribution to what Rafael was saying. So it's a bit like this. So if you read Tagalog poetry, for example, and the poem says, I cannot cross the river because the river is full of sturdy trunks. What does it mean? Well, it can mean, the real river and the river has many trunks. But it could also mean that maybe the person, if I'm a farmer, I would interpret this as, well, I really want to harvest more crops, but unfortunately, maybe because of the soil or because of the weather, I'm unable to do so. If maybe a young man is reading this poem, maybe the young man is thinking, well, I'd really like to court this girl, but her parents or her brothers don't really like me, and there's so many obstacles to having a relationship with her, and so on and so forth. What I'm trying to say is that for these poems, right, in pre-colonial Philippines, or what we call our indigenous poetry, are open to a lot of interpretation. It depends on who is reading the poem. However, if you study the poetry during the Spanish colonial period, everything is fixed. So this is the poem. And at the end of the poem, in case you didn't get it, here is the moral lesson. So you cannot misinterpret the poem. So it's a little bit like language as well. Whereas the baybayin script was like flexible, ambiguous, dynamic, blah, blah, blah. The new script was not like that. Okay, so what are we saying here? While social expediency and practicality may have been valid reasons for the gradual but complete shift to Roman letters, the imposition of a new system of writing also reflected the imposition of the colonizers' worldview. So what we're trying to say is, when the Spaniards imposed their own system of writing, what they were actually imposing was also the way they looked at life. So it was more than just the changing of script, but really the influence of colonialism in the history of the script or of the language, from Tagalog to Filipino to Filipina. That's it.